see that guy driving the 2015 Honda Civic? Net worth, $1.8 million. The woman in the mall wearing Target clothes? She owns 4 rental properties. The couple eating at Chipotle instead of a steakhouse? They retired at 42. And then there's your co-worker. Designer watch, leased BMW, bottle service every weekend. Net worth? Negative $47,000. Here's what nobody tells you. Looking poor is the most powerful wealth-building strategy that exists. And looking rich is financial suicide in slow motion. I'm about to expose the math, the psychology, and the real-life data behind why the wealthiest people you'll never notice are the ones driving beaters, wearing Costco jeans, and living in houses half the size they can afford. This isn't theory, this is documented reality. Subscribe because at the end of this video, I'm giving you a comment prompt to unlock a full documentary-style breakdown of quiet wealth versus fake rich life. Let's operate. Let me start with a book that changed how America sees wealth. The Millionaire Next Door by Thomas Stanley and William Danko. They studied over 1,000 millionaires for 2 decades. And here's what they found that shattered every stereotype. The average millionaire drives a used car, lives in a modest neighborhood, wears a Timex watch, shops at regular stores. You wouldn't recognize them in a lineup. Meanwhile, the people who look rich, the ones with luxury cars, designer clothes, and Instagram-worthy lifestyles, most of them have a net worth under $100,000 despite earning 6 figures. Stanley called them big hat, no cattle. All show, no substance. And here's the most brutal finding. People who looked wealthy spent 2.5 times more on cars, clothing, and housing than actual millionaires. They were spending their wealth to signal wealth. The real wealthy were hiding their wealth to build more wealth. This wasn't a coincidence, it was a strategy. Now let me show you the math that explains why looking poor compounds into millions. Let's take 2 people. Both earn $80,000 per year. Person A wants to look successful, buys a $50,000 car on a 6-year loan, $750 monthly payment, lives in a luxury apartment, $2,200 per month, designer clothes, $400 monthly, total annual looking rich cost, $40,200. After taxes and basic expenses, they save maybe $3,000 per year. Person B doesn't care about image, buys a $12,000 used car in cash, lives in a basic apartment, $1,100 per month, wears normal clothes, $100 monthly. Total annual cost, $14,400. They save and invest $28,000 per year. Here's where it gets insane. Person B invests that $28,000 annually in a low-cost S&P 500 index fund. Historical average return, 10% per year. After 10 years, Person A has a car worth $8,000 and maybe $30,000 in savings. Total net worth, $38,000. Person B has $486,000 in investments. After 20 years, Person A is still working, maybe has $120,000 saved, still making car payments. Person B has $1,753,000. They can retire. Same salary, different choices. One person looked rich for 20 years and stayed broke. The other looked poor for 20 years and became a multi-millionaire. This is the power of invisibility. When you don't spend money proving you have money, the money compounds into actual freedom. Now let me introduce you to the FIRE movement. Financial independence, retire early. These are people who figured out the game decades ago. They live on 40% to 50% of their income and invest the rest. They drive used cars. They cook at home. They wear the same clothes for years. They look poor on purpose. And they retire in their 30s and 40s while everyone else is still grinding. The math behind FIRE is simple but brutal. If you can live on 50% of your income and invest the other 50% at a 10% return, you can retire in 16.6 years. Not 40 years, not 30 years, 16.6 years. How? Because once your investments generate enough passive income to cover your living expenses, you're done. You're financially independent. But here's the catch. You can only do this if you keep your living expenses low. If you're spending $80,000 per year to look rich, you need $2 million invested to generate that in passive income at a 4% withdrawal rate. But if you're spending $40,000 per year because you don't care about image, you only need $1 million. You cut your retirement number in half just by looking poor. And this is why the fake rich never escape. They're trapped in what I call the image prison. Let me show you how this prison works. You get a $15,000 raise. Your co-workers know, your friends know, your family knows. Now there's social pressure. Why are you still driving that old car? You make good money now. Why don't you upgrade your apartment? Come on, one designer bag won't kill you, so you upgrade. New car lease, better apartment, more expensive lifestyle. That $15,000 raise now costs you $18,000 in increased spending. You're more broke than before the raise, but you look successful, so everyone assumes you're winning. Meanwhile, the person who kept their raise a secret, they invested the entire $15,000. In 20 years, at 10% return, that single raise becomes $100,000. The person who broadcasted their success got a temporary ego boost. The person who stayed invisible got $100,000 in wealth. This is why looking poor is so powerful. It eliminates social pressure. When nobody knows you got a raise, nobody expects you to spend it. When nobody knows you're doing well, nobody judges your old car or cheap clothes. You're free to build wealth without performance anxiety. Now let me show you the data that proves this isn't just theory. A study from the Federal Reserve tracked spending habits of high-income earners over 30 years. The ones who spent the most on visible status items, cars, watches, designer clothes, had the lowest net worth. The ones who spent the least on status had the highest net worth. In fact, for every $10,000 increase in visible status spending, net worth decreased by an average of $23,000. Status spending doesn't just cost the money you spend, it costs the compound growth you lose. Another study from Fidelity Investments found that 42% of millionaires shop at Walmart or discount stores regularly. 61% haven't bought a new car in the last 3 years. 79% have never spent more than $1,000 on a watch. These aren't people who can't afford luxury. These are people who understand that every dollar spent on looking rich is a dollar that can't compound into actual wealth, and they'd rather be rich than look rich. But here's what's even more interesting. A study from the University of Michigan found that people who drive luxury cars are more likely to be in debt than people who drive economy cars. Why? Because the luxury car is often the tip of the iceberg. If you're willing to overspend on a car, you're probably willing to overspend on everything else. Let me tell you about a concept called stealth wealth. This is what the truly wealthy practice. They intentionally downplay their success. Warren Buffett lives in the same house he bought in 1958 for $31,500. Mark Cuban wore the same pair of sneakers for years. Sam Walton drove a pickup truck. These aren't frugal people. These are strategic people. They know that the moment you start looking wealthy, 3 things happen. First, people ask you for money. Friends, family, strangers. Your wealth becomes everyone else's emergency fund. Third, you create lifestyle inflation that's almost impossible to reverse. Once you upgrade to luxury, going back to normal feels like poverty. Stealth wealth avoids all 3 problems. You build wealth in silence. You help people quietly. You live comfortably, but not extravagantly. And you're free. Free from expectations. Free from performance anxiety. Free from the trap of maintaining an image you can't actually afford. Now here's the psychological trap that keeps most people from doing this. Ego. You want credit for your success. You want people to know you're doing well. You want validation. And that need for external validation costs you everything. Let me prove it with a study from Yale. Researchers found that people who publicly announced their financial success were 3.7 times more likely to make impulsive luxury purchases within 90 days. Why? Because once you announce success, you have to maintain the image. You've created an expectation, and meeting that expectation becomes more important than building actual wealth. But people who kept their success private invested 4.2 times more than those who announced it. Privacy eliminates the performance pressure. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. You can just build. This is why looking poor is the ultimate cheat code. It removes ego from the equation. It removes social pressure. It removes the need to perform, and it lets your money do what money does best: compound in silence. Solution time. Here's how you implement stealth wealth starting today. Solution 1. The invisibility principle. What? Never upgrade your lifestyle after a raise or windfall for at least 12 months. How? When you get more money, invest it immediately. Pretend the raise never happened. Live exactly as you did before. After 12 months, if you still want to upgrade, use only 25% of the increase. Invest the other 75%. Example: I got a $20,000 raise in 2021. Didn't touch my lifestyle for a year. Invested the entire amount. 12 months later, I realized I didn't need to upgrade anything. That $20,000 is now worth $28,000 and will be $52,000 in 10 years. Solution 2. The 10-year rule. What? Before buying any status item, calculate what that money would become if invested for 10 years at 10%. How? Use a compound interest calculator. $30,000 luxury car upgrade becomes... Suddenly, that car costs $78,000, not $30,000. Ask yourself, is this status item worth $78,000? Example: I wanted a $5,000 watch. Ran the numbers. That's $13,000 in 10 years. Is a watch worth $13,000? No. Bought a $150 watch, invested the difference. Solution 3. The anti-flex lifestyle. What? Actively choose to look average or below average in your spending. How? Drive a car that's 7+ years old, shop at regular stores, eat at normal restaurants. When people ask why you don't upgrade, just say, I'm happy with what I have. Example, I drive a 2012 Toyota. People assume I'm struggling. I'm not. I just prefer having $500,000 invested over impressing strangers at red lights. Mental firewall installed. The image prison deleted. You just learned what the wealthy know, but rarely say out loud. Looking poor is the most powerful wealth building strategy because it eliminates the single biggest expense most people have, the cost of maintaining an image. Every dollar you spend proving you have money is a dollar that can't compound into actual freedom. The fake rich spend decades performing wealth for an audience that doesn't care. The real wealthy spend decades building wealth in silence for a life of freedom nobody sees coming. So here's your decision. Do you want to look rich or be rich? Because you can't have both. One is a performance. One is a strategy. One keeps you broke. One sets you free. Hit subscribe because the content never stops.